The scent of lilies made me want to vomit. They filled the cathedral in massive arrangements, white and pristine and completely wrong for what this day actually was. A funeral for the girl I used to be, dressed up as a wedding. I stood before the full-length mirror in the bride's preparation room, my hands trembling as I smoothed the ivory silk of my wedding gown. The dress was a masterpiece, custom-made by Valentino himself, with delicate lace sleeves and a fitted bodice that emphasized curves I'd spent years trying to hide. The kind of dress every girl dreams of wearing. The kind of dress that should have made me feel beautiful. Instead, I felt like a lamb being prepared for slaughter. "Carmine, you look stunning." My mother's voice carried that forced brightness I'd learned to recognize over the years. The tone that meant she was lying to herself as much as to me. She adjusted my veil with practiced precision, her manicured fingers careful not to disturb the elaborate updo my hairstylist had spent 3 hours perfecting. "Thank you, Mama." The words came automatically, years of training and proper behavior making my responses smooth, even when my heart was shattering. Through the open window, I could hear the cathedral filling with guests. The cream of Italian society, powerful families from across the country, all gathered to witness the union that would cement the alliance between the Marino and Caccini dynasties. Politicians who owed my father favors, businessmen who needed his protection, and beneath it all, the undercurrent of fear that came with the territory. My father, Antonio Marino, controlled the southern regions with an iron fist wrapped in expensive Italian leather. And Lorenzo Caccini, the man I was about to marry, commanded the north with a ruthlessness that made even my father seem gentle. "Where is Ambra?" I asked, hating how my voice caught on my sister's name. My mother's hand stilled on my veil. "She's already seated with your aunt. You know she couldn't be in the bridal party, Kara. It would have been inappropriate." Inappropriate. The word was bitter on my tongue. What was truly inappropriate was marrying a man who wanted my younger sister, who had made it abundantly clear that I was merely a substitute, a strategic necessity he'd been forced to accept. I closed my eyes, remembering the conversation I'd overheard 3 weeks ago. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. I'd simply returned early from a dress fitting and heard voices in my father's study. Lorenzo's deep baritone, always so controlled, had carried through the heavy oak door. "I'll marry Carmine as agreed, Antonio. The alliance is too important to let personal preference interfere. But understand this, I will never love her. She'll be my wife, mother to my heirs, but she'll never be the woman I wanted." My father's response had been pragmatic, almost apologetic. "Ambra is too young, Lorenzo, and you know our traditions. The eldest daughter must marry first." "Traditions." Lorenzo had laughed, a sound devoid of humor. How convenient that tradition forces me to take the wrong sister. I'd stood frozen in the hallway, my hand pressed against my mouth to stifle the sob threatening to escape. The dress box from my fitting had slipped from my nerveless fingers, landing with a soft thud on the marble floor. But neither man had heard. They'd continued discussing me like I was a business transaction, a merger to be executed with efficiency but no emotion. That night, something inside me had crystallized. The naive girl who'd harbored secret feelings for Lorenzo Caccini, who'd watched him from afar at family gatherings and dreamed of catching his attention, died. In her place rose someone harder, colder, more calculating. If Lorenzo wanted to treat this marriage as a business arrangement, then that's exactly what he'd get. But I'd make sure he regretted every moment of it. "Carmine." My mother's sharp tone pulled me back to the present. "The photographer is waiting. We need the pre-ceremony portraits." I opened my eyes and met my reflection again. The woman staring back looked like a bride from a fairy tale. Dark waves cascading over bare shoulders, hazel eyes enhanced with subtle makeup, full lips painted a shade that matched the blush roses in my bouquet. I looked like someone getting everything she'd ever wanted. The irony would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. The next hour passed in a blur of posed photographs and false smiles. My bridesmaids, daughters of allied families, fussed over my train and adjusted my veil between shots. They chattered excitedly about the reception, the honeymoon Lorenzo had planned in Amalfi, the gorgeous dress, the handsome groom. None of them knew the truth. None of them had heard what I'd heard. "It's time," my father announced, appearing in the doorway of the preparation room. Antonio Marino cut an imposing figure in his custom tuxedo. His silver-streaked dark hair swept back from a face that had launched 1,000 deals and probably twice as many threats. He extended his arm, and I took it automatically, years of obedience overriding the urge to run. "You look beautiful, figlia mia," he said quietly as we made our way to the cathedral entrance. "Lorenzo is a fortunate man." "Is he, Papa?" The words escaped before I could stop them. Or am I the fortunate one, being married off to a man who wanted someone else? My father's jaw tightened, but his stride never faltered. "You know how this works, Carmine. Love is a luxury we cannot afford. Respect, loyalty, alliance, these are what matter. Lorenzo will treat you well. He'll protect you. That's more than most women in our world can hope for." "What about what I hoped for?" I whispered, but the cathedral doors were opening, and the wedding march had begun, drowning out my words. The cathedral was magnificent. Candlelight flickered from hundreds of candelabras, casting dancing shadows across frescoed walls that had witnessed centuries of unions. The pews were packed with Italy's most powerful families, all turned to watch my procession down the seemingly endless aisle. But I only saw him. Lorenzo Caccini stood at the altar like a dark angel, all sharp angles and controlled power wrapped in an impeccably tailored tuxedo. At 32, he was in his prime, with the kind of commanding presence that made people instinctively step back. His dark hair was styled with casual perfection, and even from this distance, I could see those storm-gray eyes that had haunted my dreams for years. He wasn't smiling. Lorenzo rarely smiled. But his expression was composed, almost pleasant, the face of a man fulfilling an obligation with acceptable grace. As I walked toward him on my father's arm, I studied every detail I could, the set of his broad shoulders, the strong line of his jaw, the way his hands hung relaxed at his sides. Everything about him screamed control, power, absolute certainty in his place at the top of the food chain. Good. Let him be certain. Let him think this would be easy. Our eyes met halfway down the aisle, and something flickered in those gray depths. Assessment, perhaps. Approval of my appearance, the way one might appreciate a well-chosen accessory. Nothing deeper. Nothing real. My fingers tightened on my father's arm, and I lifted my chin higher. If Lorenzo noticed the defiance in the gesture, he gave no sign. The ceremony passed in a haze of Latin prayers and solemn vows. I spoke my part clearly, firmly, letting each word ring through the cathedral. Lorenzo's responses were equally steady, his deep voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction even as he promised things I knew he didn't mean. To have and to hold, to love and to cherish. Lies. Beautiful. Necessary lies that would bind us together until death. When the priest pronounced us husband and wife, Lorenzo lifted my veil with practiced efficiency. His hands were steady as they framed my face, and for just a moment, we stood frozen, staring at each other. This close, I could see the faint scar along his left eyebrow, the result of a childhood fight he'd won decisively. I could smell his cologne, something expensive with notes of bergamot and sandalwood. Then he kissed me. It was proper, appropriate for the setting, but I felt it down to my toes. His lips were firm, controlled, giving nothing away. When he pulled back, his expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes had sharpened. The cathedral erupted in applause. We turned to face our audience as husband and wife, and I saw Ambra in the third row, her beautiful face pale, her dark eyes swimming with tears. For my baby sister, the one Lorenzo actually wanted, the one he'd been denied by tradition and timing and the cruel accident of birth order. I looked away, unable to bear the pity in her gaze. The receiving line was endless. Hundreds of guests filed past to offer congratulations and well wishes. I smiled until my face ached, accepted kisses on both cheeks, and murmured appropriate responses. Lorenzo's hand remained on the small of my back, a show of unity for our audience. Bellissima, old Don Salvatore wheezed, his gnarled hands clasping mine. Lorenzo, you've chosen well. She'll give you strong sons. I have no doubt, Lorenzo replied smoothly, and I felt his fingers press slightly harder against my spine, as if I were a broodmare being evaluated for stud purposes. The thought made anger flash hot through my veins, but I kept my smile fixed in place. By the time we reached the reception at my father's estate, I was exhausted from the effort of maintaining my facade. The ballroom had been transformed into something from a dream. All white roses and crystal chandeliers, and enough champagne to float a small navy. Our first dance as husband and wife was perfectly choreographed. Lorenzo led with the confidence of a man who'd been trained in such things since childhood, and I followed, because I'd had the same training. We moved together with mechanical precision, looking every bit the perfect couple. You look beautiful tonight, Lorenzo said quietly, his mouth near my ear so only I could hear over the music. Thank you. I kept my voice equally low. Though I suspect any woman would look beautiful in Valentino and diamonds. His eyes narrowed slightly. That's not what I meant. Wasn't it? I met his gaze directly, letting him see past the bride's pleasant smile for just a moment. Don't worry, Lorenzo. I understand exactly what tonight is about. What this marriage is about. You don't need to pretend otherwise when we're alone. Something dangerous flashed across his face. Careful, Carmine. You're my wife now. I'd advise you to remember that. Oh, I remember. I smiled, sweet as poisoned honey. Do you remember what you said to my father? About how I'll never be the woman you wanted? Because I remember that very clearly. He went very still, his hand tightening on my waist. You were eavesdropping. I was returning from a fitting. You were discussing me like I was a piece of property. I don't think the fault here is mine. The music swelled around us, violins reaching a crescendo that masked the tension crackling between our bodies. To everyone watching, we looked like newlyweds lost in each other. Only we knew the truth. We need to talk, Lorenzo said flatly. Privately. Of course, marito. I used the Italian word for husband deliberately, letting it drip with irony. After all, we have a lifetime to talk, don't we? A lifetime of you wishing I were someone else. His jaw clenched, but the song was ending, and we had to maintain appearances. He released me with deliberate care and led me off the dance floor, his hand never leaving my back. The rest of the reception blurred together. More champagne, more well-wishers, more photographs capturing the beautiful lie. I danced with my father, with Lorenzo's cousins, with various business associates whose names I'd never remember. Lorenzo disappeared for stretches of time, pulled into hushed conversations with men whose faces I recognized from my father's private meetings. Business never stopped, not even on a wedding day. It was nearly midnight when Lorenzo finally appeared at my side again. It's time to leave, he said simply. My heart skipped a beat. Of course, the wedding night. Another tradition, another obligation. Another performance for an audience that would gossip tomorrow about whether the marriage had been properly consummated. I nodded, maintaining my composure even as dread coiled in my stomach. Whatever happened next would set the tone for everything that followed. We said our goodbyes amid a shower of rice and rose petals. Lorenzo's hand was firm on my elbow as he guided me to the waiting car. a sleek black Mercedes that screamed money and power. The driver opened the door, and I slid inside, my wedding dress pooling around me like sea foam. Lorenzo followed, and suddenly the spacious back seat felt suffocatingly small. "The villa in Positano, Signor Caccini?" the driver asked. "Yes. Take the scenic route. There's no rush." The car pulled away from my father's estate, leaving behind the lights and music and the last remnants of the girl I used to be. I stared out the window at the Italian countryside rolling past, moonlight silvering the olive groves and vineyards. Somewhere in my chest, my heart was beating too fast, my breath coming too shallow. "Carmine." Lorenzo's voice was quiet, controlled. "Look at me." I turned slowly, meeting those gray eyes that gave away nothing. "What you overheard," he began, and I could see him choosing his words with care. "I won't apologize for speaking honestly to your father, but I will say this. You are my wife now. That means something to me, even if it's not what either of us would have chosen. How gracious of you." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "Tell me, Lorenzo, does Ambra know? Does she know you wanted her?" His expression hardened. "Your sister is a child, barely 18. Whatever I may have felt about the situation is irrelevant now." "Felt," I repeated. "Present tense or past?" "This conversation is pointless." "Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, I just married a man who's in love with my baby sister." "I think that's fairly relevant to our situation, don't you?" "I never said I was in love with her," Lorenzo snapped, his control cracking just slightly. "No, you just said she was the woman you wanted, the woman you were denied, that I'm the wrong sister." I turned away again, unable to look at him anymore. "Do you have any idea what that feels like? Knowing I'm a consolation prize? A substitute for what you really wanted?" Silence filled the car. I could feel Lorenzo's gaze on me, could sense the tension radiating from his body, but I refused to look at him. "You're not a consolation prize," he said finally, his voice rough. "You're my wife, the mother of my future children, the woman who will stand beside me as I build my empire. That's not nothing, Carmine." "No," I agreed softly, still staring out at the dark landscape. "It's not nothing, but it's not love either, is it? It's duty. Obligation. A business arrangement dressed up in white silk and wedding vows. Love is a luxury people like us can't afford," Lorenzo said, echoing my father's words from earlier. "What we have is more important, more lasting." I laughed, the sound bitter even to my own ears. "Keep telling yourself that, Lorenzo. Maybe eventually you'll believe it." The rest of the drive passed in heavy silence. When we finally arrived at the villa, a beautiful stone structure perched on cliffs overlooking the Mediterranean, I felt like I was walking to my execution. Lorenzo helped me from the car with impeccable courtesy, his hand steady on mine even as I trembled. Inside, the villa was lit with soft candlelight, rose petals scattered across marble floors leading to the bedroom. Someone had prepared a romantic scene for us. The irony was almost painful. "I'll give you privacy to change," Lorenzo said, his voice carefully neutral. "The bedroom is upstairs, first door on the right." I nodded, not trusting my voice, and climbed the sweeping staircase alone. The bedroom was stunning. All antique furniture and French doors opening onto a balcony with ocean views. My luggage had been brought up and unpacked by invisible hands. I found the nightgown that had been laid out, white silk and lace, and changed mechanically. Removed my jewelry. Took down my hair. Washed my face free of makeup until I looked like myself again, not the polished bride from the ceremony. When Lorenzo finally entered, I was sitting on the edge of the massive bed, hands folded in my lap, waiting. He'd changed too, into dark pajama pants and nothing else. I tried not to notice the defined muscles of his chest and abdomen, the way candlelight played across his skin, making him look like some Renaissance sculpture come to life. "Carmine." He stopped a few feet away, and for the first time all day, he looked uncertain. "I know this isn't what either of us planned, but we're here now. We've made our vows. We can make this work." "Can we?" I stood, meeting his eyes directly. "Tell me something honestly, Lorenzo. When you look at me, do you see me? Or do you see her?" His jaw clenched. "That's not fair. None of this is fair." I moved closer until we were almost touching. "You wanted Ambra. Beautiful, sweet, perfect Ambra, and you got me instead." Practical, sharp-tongued Carmine, the wrong sister. "Stop saying that," he growled. "Why?" "It's true." I tilted my head back, refusing to be intimidated by his size, his power, his barely controlled anger. "But here's what you need to understand, Marito. I'm not going to spend our marriage trying to be someone I'm not. I'm not going to try to make you love me or pretend this is some grand romance. You wanted a business arrangement? Fine. That's what you'll get." "And what exactly does that mean?" His voice was dangerously soft. I smiled, cold and precise. "It means I'll be the perfect Signora Caccini in public. I'll smile at your business associates, host your dinners, wear your diamonds, and give you your airs. But don't expect me to fall at your feet with gratitude. Don't expect me to pretend I don't know the truth. And most of all, don't expect me to love you just because tradition says I should." Something flashed in Lorenzo's eyes, hot and dangerous. Before I could react, he'd closed the distance between us, one hand gripping my waist, while the other tangled in my hair. "You want honesty, Mowgli?" He used the Italian word for wife like a weapon. "Here's some honesty. I don't need your love. I don't need your affection. What I need is your loyalty, your obedience, and your body in my bed when I want it. Everything else is negotiable." His words should have frightened me, should have made me recoil. Instead, they sparked something fierce and reckless in my chest. "Then take it," I challenged, my voice steady even as my heart raced. "Take what you think you're entitled to, but don't expect me to make it easy." Lorenzo's grip tightened, and I saw the moment his control finally snapped. I woke to sunlight streaming through gauze curtains and the sound of waves crashing against cliffs below. For one blessed moment, I forgot where I was, forgot what had happened. Then I felt the warm weight of an arm across my waist, the solid presence of a body behind mine, and memory came flooding back. My wedding night. Lorenzo. Everything. I lay very still, acutely aware of his bare chest pressed against my back, his steady breathing indicating he was still asleep. At some point during the night, we'd gravitated toward each other despite the vast expanse of bed available. Or perhaps he'd pulled me close deliberately, even in sleep, unwilling to relinquish control. What had happened after our confrontation had been complicated. Not gentle, not romantic, but not cruel either. Lorenzo had claimed what he considered his right as a husband, and I'd refused to show weakness. It had been a battle of wills even in intimacy, neither of us willing to fully surrender. Afterward, he'd held me in silence until my breathing steadied and exhaustion claimed me. No sweet words, no false promises, just the weight of his arm and the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against my spine. Now, in the harsh light of morning, reality felt even more oppressive. I carefully extracted myself from his embrace and slipped out of bed, wrapping myself in a silk robe before padding to the balcony. The Mediterranean stretched before me in shades of azure and turquoise, beautiful and indifferent to the mess I'd made of my life. "Running already?" Lorenzo's voice came from behind me, rough with sleep. I didn't turn around. I needed air. "We have a schedule today." I heard him moving closer. "Breakfast with my mother and sisters at 9. They're eager to meet you properly." "Of course." More performances, more polite lies. How wonderful. His hand settled on my shoulder, and I fought the urge to shrug it off. Carmine, what happened last night was exactly what we both knew it would be, I interrupted, finally facing him. In the morning light, he looked less intimidating. His dark hair was mussed, his jaw shadowed with stubble, and there was something almost human in his eyes. A duty fulfilled, nothing more. His jaw tightened. Is that really how you want this to be? Cold transactions and emotional distance? You're the one who set those terms, remember? I crossed my arms. I'm just following your lead, Marito. Stop calling me that. His voice had an edge now. My name is Lorenzo. But you are my husband, I said sweetly. Isn't that what you wanted? For me to remember my place? Before he could respond, his phone rang from the bedroom. He held my gaze for another moment, then turned away to answer it, his voice dropping into rapid Italian I couldn't quite catch. I took the opportunity to escape to the bathroom, locking the door behind me before leaning against it and closing my eyes. I couldn't let him see how much this affected me. Couldn't let him know that beneath the anger and defiance, there was still a foolish part of me that had hoped. No, that girl was dead. I'd killed her myself. Breakfast with the Cazzini women was exactly as excruciating as I'd anticipated. Lorenzo's mother, Vittoria, was a formidable woman in her 60s, all sharp eyes and sharper observations. His two sisters, Giulia and Francesca, were polite but distant, clearly reserving judgment on their brother's new wife. The wedding was lovely, Vittoria said, stirring sugar into her espresso with precise movements. Though I noticed the bride seemed rather composed for such an emotional day. Carmine doesn't believe in displays, Lorenzo replied smoothly from beside me, his hand resting possessively on my thigh beneath the table. It's one of the things I appreciate about her. Giulia, the younger sister, raised an eyebrow. How modern. Most brides at least pretend to be overcome with joy. Perhaps I'm not most brides, I said, meeting her gaze directly. Clearly. Francesca's smile didn't reach her eyes. Tell me, Carmine, what do you plan to do with your time? Lorenzo is very busy with business. You'll need something to occupy yourself. The underlying message was clear. Stay out of the way and don't interfere. I smiled back with equal insincerity. Oh, I'm sure I'll find ways to keep myself entertained. Lorenzo's fingers tightened warningly on my leg, but I ignored him. After breakfast, he pulled me aside in the villa's garden, his expression thunderous. What the hell was that? What was what? I asked innocently. That performance with my family. They're trying to welcome you, and you're being deliberately antagonistic. They're testing me, I corrected, seeing if I'll be a good little wife who knows her place. And I'm showing them I won't. You're my wife, Carmine. That means presenting a united front, especially with family. I laughed bitterly. United? We're about as united as two enemy armies forced into a temporary truce. Don't pretend otherwise. His hands framed my face, forcing me to look at him. Listen to me very carefully. I understand you're angry about what you overheard, but this petulant act needs to stop. You're a Caccini now, and that comes with responsibilities and expectations you will meet. Or what? I challenged. You'll divorce me? We both know that's not an option. Our families need this alliance too much. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. There are many ways to make a marriage work, Cara. Some more pleasant than others. I'd advise you to choose wisely. Before I could respond, his phone rang again. He answered with visible irritation. Then his expression went cold and flat. When? A pause. I'll be there in an hour. He ended the call and looked at me. I have to return to Rome. Immediately. Business? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Always. He was already moving toward the villa, his mind clearly shifting to whatever crisis demanded his attention. Marco will stay with you. Don't leave the villa without him. I'm a prisoner now? Lorenzo stopped, turning back to face me. You're my wife. That makes you a target for anyone who wants to get to me. Marco isn't a jailer. He's protection. How reassuring, I muttered. He was gone within the hour, leaving me alone in the beautiful villa with a burly bodyguard named Marco, who spoke maybe 10 words total. I spent the day exploring, discovering the extent of my gilded cage. The villa was stunning, all antique furniture and original artwork. The wine cellar alone probably cost more than most people's houses. Every room spoke of wealth, accumulated over generations, power built on foundations I didn't want to examine too closely. That evening, as I was reading on the terrace, Marco appeared. Signora, there's a call for you. I took the phone he offered, expecting Lorenzo. Instead, a woman's voice came through, warm and familiar. Carmine, it's Julia. I wanted to apologize for this morning. I straightened in surprise. Oh? My mother can be. Intense. And Francesca is protective of Lorenzo. But I think we got off on the wrong foot. She paused. I'd like to take you to lunch tomorrow. Just us, no family politics. Would you be interested? Every instinct screamed trap, but refusing would be its own kind of statement. That would be lovely. After we disconnected, I stared at the phone, trying to decode what had just happened. Was this a genuine peace offering, or another test? I was still pondering when Marco appeared again. Signora, Don Caccini on the line. Lorenzo's voice was clipped when I answered. How was your day? Lonely, I said honestly. Your sister called. Which one? Julia. She invited me to lunch tomorrow. Silence. Then, be careful what you say to her. Julia is sweet, but she reports everything back to our mother. So, I'm being tested again. You're being integrated, Lorenzo corrected. There's a difference. His voice softened slightly. I know this isn't easy, Carmine, but you need to try to get along with my family. Why? You made it clear this marriage is just business. Do business partners need to bond with each other's families? I heard him exhale sharply. We're not just business partners. No, we're strangers who had sex last night and will presumably do so again when duty requires. Much more intimate. Carmine, when are you coming back? I interrupted, not wanting to hear whatever he was about to say. 3 days, maybe 4. There are complications that need handling. Of course there are. I kept my voice light, uncaring. Don't worry about me, Marito. I'll be fine entertaining myself in my beautiful prison. It's not a prison. Then let me leave. Let me visit my family, go shopping in town, live like a normal person. With Marco, yes. Alone, no. So it is a prison. It's protection, and you know it. His voice hardened. I won't argue about this, Carmine. Marco stays with you, or you don't leave the villa at all. Your choice. I ended the call without responding, too angry to trust myself to speak. The next day, Julia arrived promptly at noon, driving a sleek convertible and wearing enormous sunglasses that screamed old money. She smiled when she saw me, and it seemed genuine. Ready to escape for a few hours? More than you know, I admitted. Marco followed in a separate car. A looming presence I tried to ignore as Julia drove us to a charming restaurant overlooking the coast. Over wine and pasta, she proved to be surprisingly easy to talk to. I know what you're thinking, she said after our food arrived, that I'm spying for Mama, reporting back on Lorenzo's strange new wife. The thought had crossed my mind. She laughed. I probably will tell her something. She'd know if I didn't. But I'm also genuinely curious about you. Lorenzo has never shown interest in anyone before, and suddenly he marries you. It's intriguing. He married me because our fathers arranged it, I said flatly. Nothing more. Julia studied me over her wine glass. Is that what he told you? Among other things. Lorenzo has a way of saying what he thinks he should, rather than what he actually feels, she said carefully. He's been trained his whole life to compartmentalize, to separate emotion from duty. Well, he's excellent at it, I said bitterly. She was quiet for a moment. My brother isn't an easy man to love, but he's not incapable of it either, despite what he might think. Our father was. Difficult. He taught Lorenzo that emotion was weakness, that caring for people made you vulnerable. Your father sounds delightful. He was terrifying, Julia said simply, and he shaped Lorenzo into someone equally terrifying in many ways. But there's more to my brother than the cold businessman he shows the world. If you say so. She leaned forward. Carmine, I don't know what happened between you two, what was said or promised, but I do know this. Lorenzo doesn't do anything halfway. If he married you, even if it started as an arrangement, he won't half-ass being your husband. Give him time to figure out what that means. I wanted to tell her about the conversation I'd overheard, about Ambra, about being the wrong sister. But something held me back. Instead, I just nodded and changed the subject. We spent another hour talking about lighter things. Her life in Milan, her failed engagement to a banker, her dreams of opening an art gallery. By the time she dropped me back at the villa, I almost felt like I'd made a friend. But as I watched her drive away, I couldn't shake her words. Was there more to Lorenzo than what I'd seen? Or was I just desperate enough to believe there might be? That night, I discovered the first sign that my isolation wasn't as complete as I'd thought. While looking for a book in Lorenzo's study, I found a folder labeled with my name. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, dating back months. Me leaving work, me having coffee with friends, me shopping for groceries, me walking through the park near my old apartment. Someone had been watching me long before the wedding was ever announced, long before I'd become necessary to the alliance. My hands trembled as I flipped through the images, my mind racing. Why? Why would Lorenzo have had me followed? What was I missing? The sound of a car in the driveway made me quickly return the folder to its place. But as I headed upstairs, I couldn't shake the implications. This wasn't just an arranged marriage. This was something else entirely. And I was beginning to realize I'd underestimated Lorenzo Caccini completely. Lorenzo returned on the fourth day, appearing in the villa's doorway just after sunset, with the same controlled intensity he brought to everything. I was in the library, pretending to read while actually replaying my discovery of those surveillance photos over and over in my mind. Carmine. His voice made me look up from the book I hadn't been absorbing. He looked tired, I noticed. Shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before he left. Welcome back, I said neutrally, marking my page. He moved into the room, loosening his tie with one hand. We need to talk. Do we? I set the book aside. About what specifically? Your need to have me followed for months before we were married? Or perhaps about why those photos exist at all? He went very still. You went through my study. I was looking for a book. I found surveillance instead. I stood, crossing my arms. Care to explain, Marito? His jaw tightened at my use of the formal term, but his voice remained controlled. How much did you see? Enough. Months of photos, Lorenzo. Someone watching me, documenting my movements, my habits. I moved closer. Why? He poured himself a drink from the bar cart, his movements deliberate. Sit down. I'd rather stand. Carmine. His voice carried a warning. Please. The please surprised me enough that I complied, settling back into my chair. Lorenzo took the seat across from me, cradling his whiskey glass. What do you know about how our marriage was arranged? He asked finally. That our fathers decided it would strengthen the alliance between our families. That tradition required the eldest daughter to marry first. I paused. That you wanted Ambra instead. Something flickered across his face. It's more complicated than that. Then uncomplicate it for me. He took a long drink before speaking. 2 years ago, I attended a charity gala in Naples. Your father was there with both his daughters. I noticed you first. The words hung between us, unexpected and confusing. What? Ambra is beautiful, yes. Everyone notices Ambra. His gray eyes met mine. But you were the one I couldn't stop watching. The way you handled the social politics, navigated conversations with people twice your age, made alliances without seeming to try. You were 19, and you already understood the game better than most people who'd been playing it their whole lives. I stared at him, my mind refusing to process what he was saying. You're lying. I'm not. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I asked your father about you that night. He said you were too young, that any marriage discussions would have to wait. So I waited. Then why? I couldn't finish the question. Because 6 months ago, I heard rumors that your father was considering an alliance with the Rossi family, that he planned to offer you to Marco Rossi's son. Marco Rossi. The name alone made my stomach turn. His son Dante was known for his cruelty, his volatile temper, his collection of broken women who'd made the mistake of catching his attention. Papa wouldn't have, I whispered, though I wasn't sure. He was considering it. Lorenzo's voice was flat. The Rossi alliance would have been advantageous for him. And you were getting older, harder to marry off with Ambra waiting in the wings. He was being practical. So you what? Decided to save me? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. I decided to act before someone else did. He drained his whiskey. I approached your father with a counter-proposal. A marriage alliance between our families that would be far more beneficial than anything the Rossis could offer. He agreed on the condition that tradition be observed, that the eldest daughter marry first. So you never wanted Ambra. The realization was settling over me like ice water. That conversation I overheard was me playing a role I thought I needed to play. He stood, pacing to the window. Your father was suspicious of my interest in you specifically. It wasn't normal for someone of my position to have a preference. So I redirected his attention to Ambra, made him think I was settling for you, rather than choosing you. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Everything I'd believed about our marriage, about his feelings, about being the wrong sister, it was all based on a lie. Why didn't you tell me? My voice came out strangled. Because you never asked. He turned back to face me. From the moment we met as engaged couple, you've been hostile. Defensive. Looking for reasons to hate me. I gave you one because it seemed easier than fighting you on everything else too. You let me believe I was second choice. That you were in love with my baby sister. I never said I was in love with her. His voice was sharp now. You assumed that. You heard what you wanted to hear because it fit the narrative you'd already created about what this marriage was. How dare you? I started to stand, but he was suddenly there, his hands on the arms of my chair, caging me in. No, Carmine, you don't get to be angry about this. You built a wall between us based on half a conversation you weren't even part of. You decided I was the villain before you gave me a chance to be anything else. You could have corrected me. When? His face was inches from mine now. During our wedding? Our wedding night when you were so determined to prove you didn't need me? This past week while you've been making it abundantly clear that you despise me? Tears were threatening, but I refused to let them fall. The photos. Why did you have me followed? His expression softened slightly. Because I needed to know who you really were. Not the perfect daughter at family events, but the real Carmine. What you did when no one was watching. Who you spent time with. What made you smile when you thought you were alone. That's not romantic, Lorenzo. That's obsessive. In my world, they're often the same thing. He straightened, putting distance between us again. I needed to know everything before I committed to this, before I asked your father to give you to me. Give me. I seized on the phrasing. Like I'm property to be transferred. That's how it works in our world, and you know it. His voice was cold again. You can pretend otherwise, but we both know the truth. Women in families like ours are bargaining chips. The question is whether you're bargained for by someone who actually values you, or someone who sees you as just another acquisition. The brutal honesty was worse than his earlier deception. And which are you? I don't know yet. At least that seemed genuine. I value you, Carmine. I value your intelligence, your strength, your ability to navigate the world we live in. Whether that's enough to build something real between us remains to be seen. I closed my eyes, trying to process everything. The photos made horrible sense now. Lorenzo didn't do anything by half measures. If he'd decided he wanted me, of course he'd researched me as thoroughly as he would any other major acquisition. What do you want from me? I asked finally. I want you to stop fighting me on everything. I want you to try to make this marriage work, instead of sabotaging it at every opportunity. He poured another drink. I want my wife, Carmine, not an enemy who shares my bed. And if I can't give you that, then we'll have a very cold, very long marriage. He took a sip. But I think you're better than that. I think underneath the anger and the hurt pride, you're exactly the woman I saw at that gala 2 years ago. Someone who knows how to play the game and win. The manipulation was so clear, I almost laughed. You think flattery will work? I think honesty might. He set down his glass. I'm not a good man, Carmine. I've done things you probably can't even imagine. I'll do worse things in the future because that's what my position requires. But I will never lie to you again. I will never let anyone hurt you. And I will give you everything within my power to give. Except freedom. Freedom is an illusion in our world, but I'll give you as much autonomy as I can while keeping you safe. How generous, I said bitterly. He smiled without humor. It's more than most wives in our position get. We stared at each other across the library. Years of family politics and personal damage, creating a chasm between us that felt impossible to bridge. I need time, I said finally, to process this, all of it. Take what you need. He moved toward the door. But Carmine, the surveillance stops now. You wanted to know why those photos exist? They exist because I was trying to know you from a distance. Now you're my wife. I can learn you up close instead. After he left, I sat in the darkening library for a long time. My mind kept returning to that gala 2 years ago, trying to remember if I'd noticed him watching me. Had there been a moment when our eyes met? Had I felt something even then without knowing what it meant? I remembered the event vaguely. I'd been 19, just back from university for the summer, and my father had insisted I attend with him. Ambra had been there too, drawing attention as she always did with her ethereal beauty and sweet demeanor. I'd spent the evening doing what I did best, making myself useful, facilitating introductions, smoothing over awkward conversations, helping my father network with people who could be assets. I'd worn a navy blue dress that I'd thought made me look mature, professional. Had Lorenzo really been watching me? Or was this just another manipulation? Another way to keep me off balance? The next morning, I found him in the villa's gym, shirtless and glistening with sweat, as he worked a punching bag with focused intensity. I paused in the doorway, caught off guard by the raw physicality of it. This wasn't the controlled businessman in expensive suits. This was something more primal. He noticed me and stopped, reaching for a towel. Couldn't sleep? I want to negotiate, I said, ignoring his question. His eyebrows rose. Negotiate what? The terms of our marriage. If we're going to try to make this work, I need some things. I'm listening. I stepped into the gym, grateful for the distance the punching bag provided between us. First, I want access to my own money, not an allowance from you, but my own accounts that you can't control. Done. What else? The easy agreement threw me. I want to be able to see my family without supervision, including Ambra. His expression tightened slightly. With Marco present, but he can wait outside. Fine. Third, I want to know about your business. Not the illegal parts if you don't want to share that, but the legitimate operations. I want to be useful, Lorenzo. I have a degree in business management. Let me use it. He studied me for a long moment. That one might actually work. I've been looking for someone I can trust to oversee some of the charitable foundations, someone who can't be bought or intimidated by the families we work with. I can do that. I know you can. He moved closer. What else? I want honesty between us. No more games. No more manipulations. If you want something from me, ask directly. Agreed. On the condition that it goes both ways. I nodded. And last, I want time. Real time to figure out if this can be more than just a strategic alliance. No pressure, no expectations beyond what we've already established. How much time? 6 months. Let's give ourselves 6 months to see if we can actually build something. Lorenzo closed the remaining distance between us, and I fought the urge to step back. And what happens in 6 months, Carmine? What are we building toward? I don't know yet, I admitted. Maybe a real marriage, maybe just a functional partnership, but either way, something that doesn't feel like a prison sentence. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with surprising gentleness. I can work with that. So we have a deal? We have a deal. His hand lingered on my cheek. But fair warning, Mowgli. I'm going to do everything in my power over the next 6 months to make you fall in love with me. My breath caught. That's not part of the agreement. No, he agreed, his thumb tracing my lower lip. But it's what I want, and I usually get what I want. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He pulled away with visible reluctance, answering with his usual clipped efficiency. Whatever he heard made his expression go cold and hard. When? A pause. I'll be there within the hour. He ended the call and looked at me. I have to go back to Rome. More business? Always. He grabbed his shirt. Pack a bag. You're coming with me. What? Why? Because I just negotiated that you wanted to be involved in my business. His smile was sharp. Welcome to the family empire, Carmine. I hope you're ready for what that actually means. As I watched him stride out of the gym, I realized that I'd just opened a door I might not be able to close. Lorenzo wasn't just going to let me observe his world. He was going to pull me all the way in. Rome was different from the coastal villa. Where Positano had been beautiful and isolating, Rome was alive with energy and danger that hummed beneath its ancient stones. Lorenzo's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a historic building near the Spanish Steps, all restored Renaissance details and modern security that would make a bank envious. "This is your home now," Lorenzo said, as Marco carried my bags inside. "At least when we're in the city, which will be often." I moved through the space, taking in soaring ceilings with original frescoes, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking terracotta rooftops, furniture that managed to be both priceless and comfortable. It was beautiful in a way that made my throat tight. "The master suite is upstairs," Lorenzo continued, checking his phone with one hand while loosening his tie with the other. I had some things brought over for you, but if you need anything else, just tell Marco. Where are you going? The question came out before I could stop it. He looked up, something shifting in his expression. Meeting. Should be back by dinner. Will you be all right here? I've been alone before, Lorenzo. Not in Rome, not as my wife. He hesitated, then crossed to me. His hand cupped my face with that gentleness that still surprised me. The security here is different from the villa. Don't leave without Marco. Don't answer the door for anyone. And if anything feels wrong, there's a panic button in every room. Red button, can't miss it. You're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. The families here play differently than in the South. His thumb traced my cheekbone. I'll be back as soon as I can. After he left, I explored my new cage. It was undeniably luxurious, but the reinforced doors and bulletproof windows told a story Lorenzo's words hadn't. This wasn't just a home. It was a fortress. I found the master suite on the 3rd floor, a sprawling space dominated by an enormous bed and windows that framed the Colosseum in the distance. My clothes had been unpacked into a walk-in closet that was bigger than my childhood bedroom, mixed among suits and shirts that carried Lorenzo's scent. The intimacy of it hit me unexpectedly. This was real. I lived here now, shared this space with a man I was only beginning to understand. I was exploring the library, running my fingers along leather spines, when Marco appeared in the doorway. Signora, you have a visitor. Lorenzo said not to answer the door. She's already inside. Don Antonio sent her. My father. Curious, I followed Marco to the sitting room where a woman in her 40s waited, elegant in a dove-gray suit. She stood when I entered, her dark eyes assessing me with professional efficiency. Signora Caccini, I'm Alessandra Conti. Your father asked me to help you transition into your new role. What role exactly? Her smile was knowing. The role of a Don's wife. It's more complicated than you might think. She gestured to the folders she'd set on the coffee table. These are the charitable foundations Don Caccini oversees. He mentioned you wanted to be involved? I sat across from her, intrigued despite myself. He told my father that? He told everyone that. It's already making waves. She opened the first folder. The Caccini Foundation has been essentially dormant for 2 years since his mother passed. No one's had the authority or interest to manage it properly, until now. For the next 2 hours, Alessandra walked me through an empire I hadn't known existed. Orphanages, hospitals, scholarship programs, all funded by Lorenzo's family, and all desperately needing oversight. Why hasn't Lorenzo managed this himself? I asked. Because he's managing everything else. The legitimate businesses, the less legitimate operations, the family politics. She closed the last folder. He needs someone he can trust completely. Someone who can't be bought or intimidated. Someone who has as much to lose as he does if any of this falls apart. His wife. Exactly. Alessandra stood. I'll have these sent to your office. What office? The one being prepared for you downtown. Did Don Caccini not mention it? At my expression, she smiled. Men. They assume we can read their minds. The office will be ready by Monday. I'll meet you there at 9 to begin properly. After she left, I sat surrounded by folders full of names and numbers and needs, feeling the weight of expectation settling over me like a cloak. This was what Lorenzo had meant about being useful. This was my place in his world. I was still absorbing it when he returned just after sunset, bringing with him the metallic scent of tension that clung to his clothes. How did it go? I asked from the sofa where I'd been reviewing foundation documents. Complicated. He poured himself a drink, his movements sharp with controlled agitation. The Romano family is making moves in territory they know belongs to us. It's a provocation. What will you do? He looked at me, something calculating in his gaze. Do you really want to know? I asked, didn't I? Lorenzo settled into the chair across from me, cradling his whiskey. The Romanos are testing me. They think because I just got married, I'm distracted. Weak. They're wrong. But I need to demonstrate that clearly. How? By taking something they value more than the territory they're encroaching on. His smile was cold. Their shipping contracts through the port. Without those, their entire operation collapses. That's not illegal. The way I'll do it? Questionable. But you're right. It stays on the legal side of the line. Mostly. He took a sip. This is what you wanted, Carmine. To understand my world. Are you sure you're ready? I thought about it. Really considered what he was asking. Then I opened one of Alessandra's folders. The Romano family donates to several of the same charities the Caccini Foundation supports. What if those charities suddenly found other, better funding sources? What if the Romano name stopped being associated with anything positive? Lorenzo went very still. Go on. You take their shipping contracts. I take their reputation. By the time we're done, they won't just lose territory. They'll lose face. And in your world, isn't that worse? His expression was unreadable for a long moment. Then he smiled, genuine, and almost proud. You're devious, Mowgli. I like it. I learned from the best. I closed the folder. My father plays this game too. I just never had a reason to play it myself before. And now? Now I have a foundation to build, and a husband whose reputation affects my own. I met his eyes. If the Romanos want to test you, they test me too. I don't appreciate that. Lorenzo set down his drink and crossed to me, pulling me to my feet with a gentleness that belied the hunger in his eyes. Do you know what you're doing to me? What am I doing? Making it very difficult to give you the time you asked for. His hands settled on my waist, making me want things I promised myself I wouldn't rush. My breath caught as he leaned closer, his lips brushing my ear. What things? You, completely. Not just your body, but your loyalty, your trust, your partnership in everything. He pulled back enough to look at me. I want my wife, Carmine. The real one, not the performance we put on for everyone else. We have a deal. 6 months. I know. His thumb traced my lower lip. But that doesn't mean I can't try to accelerate the timeline. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked it with a curse. I have to take this. He stepped away, speaking in rapid Italian too quick for me to follow. But I watched his face change, saw the controlled fury building behind his eyes. When he ended the call, his expression was carved from stone. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind that requires you to pack an overnight bag immediately. He was already moving toward the bedroom. We're leaving Rome, now. Lorenzo, what's happening? He paused in the doorway, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something close to fear in his eyes. Someone sent a message to my office. A threat. Against you specifically. Ice flooded my veins. What did it say? That the easiest way to hurt a Don is through his wife. His voice was flat, controlled, but I could see the rage simmering beneath. That you're a weakness they intend to exploit. So, we run? We strategically relocate until I can identify the threat and eliminate it. He disappeared into the bedroom, already issuing orders into his phone. I stood frozen in the sitting room, surrounded by folders full of charitable work and good intentions, and realized with crystalline clarity that Lorenzo had been right. I'd asked to understand his world, to be part of it, to be useful. Now I was learning that being his wife meant being a target. And the only thing standing between me and whoever wanted to use me against him was Lorenzo himself. The question was whether that was enough. The safe house was a converted monastery in the Tuscan hills, beautiful and remote, and surrounded by enough security to protect a small nation. Lorenzo had barely spoken during the 2-hour drive, his jaw tight and his hand possessive on my thigh the entire time. Now, as Marco and 3 other men I didn't recognize swept through the building checking for threats that shouldn't exist, I watched Lorenzo pace the main room like a caged predator. "This is my fault," he said finally, his voice rough. "I got careless. Let people see that you matter to me." "I'm your wife. Of course I matter. Not like this." He stopped pacing, turning to face me. "Most marriages in our world are strategic, cordial at best. But we've been seen together too much, too publicly. The way I look at you, touch you, it tells a story I didn't mean to broadcast." "What story?" "That you're not just my wife. You're my weakness." He moved closer, his hands framing my face. "And in my world, weakness gets people killed." I should have been terrified. Instead, something warm unfurled in my chest at his words, at the raw emotion bleeding through his usual control. "Then we make me a strength instead," I said, covering his hands with mine. "You wanted a partner, Lorenzo. Let me be one." Before he could respond, Marco appeared in the doorway. "Building secure, boss. Perimeters set. Nothing gets close without us knowing." Lorenzo nodded, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "Good. I want 8-hour rotations, no exceptions. And Marco? No one knows we're here. Not my mother, not my sisters. No one." After Marco left, Lorenzo pulled me close, his arms wrapping around me with an intensity that stole my breath. "I need you to understand something, Carmine. What's happening now? The threat against you. It's just the beginning. There will always be someone trying to use you to get to me. Always someone who thinks hurting you will break me." "Will it?" I pulled back to look at him. "Break you?" His expression was raw, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. "Yes, and that's the problem." That night, I lay awake in the monastery's master bedroom, listening to Lorenzo move restlessly in the sitting room, where he'd insisted on sleeping despite the massive bed, protecting me even from himself. The next morning, Alessandra arrived with the foundation folders I'd been reviewing and a tablet full of information I hadn't requested. "How did you find us?" I asked as she spread documents across the dining table. "I didn't. Don Caccini sent a car for me." She opened the first file. "We're not stopping your work just because of a little threat." "A little threat?" Her smile was grim. "Signora, if you're going to be married to Lorenzo Caccini, you'll need thicker skin than that." Threats are part of the job description. Over the next 3 days, locked away in our beautiful prison, I threw myself into foundation work while Lorenzo conducted his empire from a makeshift office. I reorganized the charity's entire structure, identified areas of waste and corruption, and began implementing changes that would make the Caccini name synonymous with legitimate good works. It was during a video conference with one of the hospital administrators that I first saw the extent of Lorenzo's reach. The man was being evasive about missing funds, dancing around my questions with practiced ease. Then Lorenzo appeared behind me on the camera, just for a moment, his hand settling possessively on my shoulder. The administrator went pale. "Signora Caccini, my apologies. I'll have those financial reports to you within the hour." After the call ended, I turned to look at Lorenzo. What was that? That was me reminding him who he answers to. He didn't look apologetic. "You're doing good work, Carmine, but some people only respond to fear. Let me be the fear so you can be the compassion." It was a strange partnership, but it worked. Over the following days, I learned to use Lorenzo's reputation like a weapon, wielding it with precision while maintaining my own integrity. The foundation began to transform under my management, becoming something real and powerful. But the threat against us remained unresolved. On the fourth night, I woke to find Lorenzo's side of the bed empty. We'd finally started sharing it the previous evening, both of us tired of the distance and the pretense. I found him on the monastery's terrace, smoking a cigarette and staring out at the dark hills. "I thought you quit," I said, wrapping a blanket around myself against the chill. "I did. 5 years ago." He took another drag. "Then I married you, and suddenly I need vices again." I moved to stand beside him. "Have you identified who sent the threat?" "Yes." His voice was flat. "It was the Romanos, retaliating for the shipping contracts and the reputation damage. What are you going to do?" "What I always do, eliminate the problem." He ground out the cigarette. "But this time it's different. This time they threatened you, and that requires a response that sends a message no one can misinterpret. Lorenzo, I'm going to destroy them, Carmine." He turned to face me, and the cold fury in his eyes made me shiver. Not just their business operations, everything. Their properties, their investments, their standing in every family across Italy. When I'm done, the Romano name will be synonymous with failure and disgrace. That's extreme. That's necessary. His hands gripped my shoulders. "You need to understand something. In my world, perception is everything. If I let this threat stand, if I respond with anything less than overwhelming force, every other family will think they can target you too. Is that what you want?" "No," I admitted. "But I don't want you to become a monster on my behalf either." "Too late for that, Mowgli." His laugh was bitter. "I was already a monster. You just hadn't seen it yet." The next morning, Lorenzo left for Rome with Marco and half our security detail, leaving me in the monastery with strict orders not to leave under any circumstances. I spent the day working, trying not to imagine what he was doing to the Romano family. It was Alessandra who told me, arriving that afternoon with her usual efficiency and a tablet full of news articles. "The Romanos filed for bankruptcy this morning," she said without preamble. "All their assets were seized by creditors overnight. Apparently they'd been over-leveraged for years, and someone called in all their debts simultaneously." I didn't need to ask who that someone was. "There's more." She pulled up another article. 3 of their shell companies were raided by financial authorities, tax evasion, money laundering. The patriarch and his 2 eldest sons were arrested. How? Someone provided very detailed evidence to the authorities. Someone with access to information that should have been impossible to obtain. Her look was knowing. "Your husband is very thorough when he's motivated." That evening, Lorenzo returned looking exhausted, but grimly satisfied. He found me in the library, curled up with a book I wasn't really reading. "It's done," he said simply. "The Romanos are finished. And every other family in Italy now knows what happens when someone threatens you." I set down my book. "Did anyone die?" "No. I kept it legal, like you wanted." He poured himself a drink. "But they're destroyed nonetheless. Reputation, finances, freedom, everything that mattered to them is gone. Because they threatened me. Yes." He downed the whiskey. "And I'd do it again, Carmine. I'd do worse if I had to. You need to accept that about me." I stood, crossing to him. "I'm starting to understand something about you, Lorenzo. You're not actually a monster. You just play one because it's easier than letting people see that you care about things. I don't care about things. I care about you." The admission seemed to surprise him as much as it did me. "Somewhere between our wedding and now, you stopped being an acquisition and became something else. Something I can't afford to lose." My breath caught. "What am I to you?" He set down his glass and pulled me close, his hand settling on my hips with familiar possessiveness. "Mine. You're mine, Carmine. and I protect what's mine with everything I have." "That's not love," I whispered. "No," he agreed. "It's obsession. It's possession. It's a need that borders on madness." His forehead rested against mine. "But maybe it's the closest thing to love that men like me are capable of." I should have been frightened by his intensity. Instead, I felt something inside me shift and settle, like a key turning in a lock I hadn't known existed. "Our 6 months isn't up yet," I reminded him. "I know." His hands tightened on my hips. "But I'm telling you now, Carmine. When it is, when you decide what you want this marriage to be, know that I've already decided. You're it for me. The only woman I'll ever want. The only one I'll ever need." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked it with a curse. "My mother. She knows we're here somehow." "How?" "Because Vittoria Caccini knows everything eventually." He typed a quick response. "She wants us to come to dinner tomorrow night. The whole family. She says it's time you were properly welcomed." That sounds ominous. It is. He smiled without humor. "My mother is going to test you, Carmine. Push you to see if you break. Try to determine if you're worthy of the Caccini name." "What if I'm not?" "You are." His conviction was absolute. "And tomorrow night, you're going to prove it to everyone." The next evening, I dressed for battle in a black Armani dress that screamed power and confidence I didn't entirely feel. Lorenzo watched me from the bedroom doorway, his eyes dark with something I was learning to recognize as desire mixed with possession. "Perfect," he said when I finished. "You look like a queen." "I feel like I'm going to war." "You are." He crossed to me, fastening a diamond necklace around my throat. "But you won't be fighting alone. I'll be right beside you." His mother's villa was everything I'd expected. Old money and older power, wrapped in Renaissance architecture and centuries of accumulated influence. Vittoria Caccini herself waited in the formal sitting room, flanked by Giulia and Francesca. "Carmine." Vittoria's eyes swept over me, assessing every detail. "How lovely. Though I'm surprised you chose black. Most new brides prefer softer colors." "I'm not most brides," I replied, accepting her air-kiss greeting. Clearly, something that might have been approval flickered in her gaze. "Lorenzo, leave us. This is a conversation for women." I felt Lorenzo tense beside me, but after a moment he nodded and withdrew, leaving me alone with the Caccini women. Vittoria gestured for me to sit. "I've been hearing interesting things about you, Carmine. About your work with the Foundation. About how you handled the Romano situation." "I didn't handle anything. Lorenzo." "Don't be modest. You identified their charitable donations as leverage. You suggested destroying their reputation alongside their finances." She leaned forward. "That was clever. Ruthless. Exactly what this family needs." I blinked, surprised. "I thought you were going to test whether I was good enough for your son." "Oh, I am testing you." Her smile was sharp. "But not the way you think. I don't care if you love Lorenzo or if this marriage was arranged. I care whether you'll protect this family's interests, whether you'll be an asset or a liability. And so far you're proving to be quite the asset." She sat back. "But know this, Carmine. In this family, we protect our own above all else. Lorenzo has made it clear that you're his now. That means you're ours too. But it also means we expect loyalty. Complete, absolute, unbreakable." "You have it," I said, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. Vittoria studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. Then welcome to the family, daughter. The real welcome, not the performance at your wedding." Later, as Lorenzo drove us back to the monastery, I felt different somehow. Lighter. Like I'd passed a test I hadn't known I was taking. What did my mother say? Lorenzo asked. That I'm yours. That makes me theirs. I looked at him. That I'm family now. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. You've always been family, from the moment you became my wife. No, I corrected softly. I became your wife when we married. I became family when I chose to fight for you instead of against you. Lorenzo pulled the car over abruptly, turning to face me with an intensity that stole my breath. Say that again. Which part? The part where you chose to fight for me. I cupped his face, this complicated, dangerous, obsessive man who'd upended my life and somehow become essential to it. I choose you, Lorenzo, not because I have to, because I want to. His kiss was fierce, claiming, full of all the emotion he couldn't put into words. And when we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I knew something fundamental had shifted between us. The 6 months we'd agreed on suddenly seemed far too long to wait. Word count 1, 291 words. And would you like me to continue with part 6? Continuer 1030. Orchestrated climactic finale uniting protagonists through conflict and choice. This is part 6, the final part. According to the instructions. Part 6. Minimum 1,200 words. Maximum 1,350 words I need to wrap up the story with. The point of no return. A threat to their relationship, life that unites them. Maximum demonstration of his power. Her free choice to stay. Elimination of other options. A satisfying conclusion to their arc. The story has been building toward Carmine fully accepting Lorenzo and their marriage, transforming from arrangement to genuine partnership, love. I need to create a climactic moment that forces her to make a final choice, and show that they've truly become a team. Let me craft a compelling conclusion that ties everything together. The call came at 3 a.m, shattering the peaceful silence of the monastery, where Lorenzo and I had been living in our self-imposed exile. I felt him tense beside me before his hand shot out to grab his phone, his voice sharp and alert despite the hour. When? A pause, then his voice went deadly cold. I'm on my way. He was out of bed before I could fully wake, pulling on clothes with practiced efficiency. I sat up, my heart already racing. Lorenzo, what's wrong? Your father's been shot. The words didn't make sense at first, then ice flooded through my veins. What? How? Ambush outside his estate. He's alive, but critical. Lorenzo was already moving toward the door. Get dressed. We're leaving now. The drive to Naples was a blur of dark highways and Lorenzo's clipped phone conversations. He held my hand the entire time, his grip almost painful, but I needed the anchor. My father. Shot. The man who'd seemed invincible my entire life. Who did it? I finally asked as we crossed into Campania. We don't know yet. Lorenzo's jaw was tight, but there will be answers and consequences. We arrived at the private hospital to find it surrounded by my father's men, all armed, all on high alert. Inside, my mother sat in the waiting room, her usually perfect composure shattered. Ambra was beside her, her face streaked with tears. Mama. I crossed to her, pulling her into my arms. What happened? They came out of nowhere. Her voice was hollow. Your father and I were returning from dinner. The car in front exploded, then gunfire. So much gunfire. She gripped my hands. If Marco hadn't been driving, if he hadn't gotten us out of there. Lorenzo was already conferring with my father's capos, his presence commanding despite this being Antonio Marino's territory. I watched him transform into the Don everyone feared, issuing orders and demanding information with cold authority. Carmine. Ambra's voice pulled my attention. She looked fragile, younger than her 19 years, nothing like the beauty Lorenzo supposedly wanted. I'm scared. Papa's strong, He'll pull through. Not just about that. Her dark eyes met mine. Whoever did this, they'll come for the rest of us too. The whole family. She was right. An attack on a Don meant war, and in war, families were fair targets. A doctor emerged, and we all surged forward. Signora Marino, your husband is stable for now. The next 48 hours are critical, but he's fighting. Relief made my knees weak. Lorenzo's hand settled on my lower back, steadying me. Can we see him? My mother asked. Immediate family only, 2 at a time. My mother went first with Ambra. When they emerged 20 minutes later, my mother looked marginally less devastated. He's awake, asking for you, Carmine. I entered the ICU room to find my father diminished in a way I'd never seen. Antonio Marino, the man who controlled the Southern Territories with absolute authority, looked old and fragile among the machines keeping him alive. Papa. I took his hand carefully, mindful of the IV lines. Carmine. His voice was weak, but steady. You came. Of course I came. With your husband. It wasn't a question. Good. You'll need him for what comes next. Don't talk like that. You're going to be fine. Maybe. Maybe not. He squeezed my hand with what little strength he had. If I don't make it, you need to know something. The alliance with the Cazzinis. It wasn't just strategic. I chose Lorenzo for you specifically. I know, Papa, he told me. Not all of it. His eyes met mine. 6 months ago, I received a threat. Against you specifically. Someone wanted to use you to control me, to force my hand in territories I controlled. He paused, breathing labored. Lorenzo found out. Came to me with a proposal. Marry you immediately. Put you under his protection where no one would dare touch you. My breath caught. The wedding. You rushed it because you were in danger. And Lorenzo Caccini made it clear that anyone who touched you would face consequences that would make the Romano situation look like mercy. He closed his eyes. I gave you to him not because I had to, but because I knew he'd keep you safe when I couldn't. Tears streamed down my face. Who threatened me? The same people who shot me tonight, I suspect. The DeSantis family. They want our territories, our power. His grip tightened. Promise me something, Figlia. Promise me you'll let Lorenzo handle this. Don't try to be brave or noble. Let him do what he does best. Destroy them? Protect you. Everything else is just details. When I emerged from the ICU, Lorenzo was waiting. He took one look at my face and pulled me into his arms, holding me as I finally broke down. He told you, Lorenzo murmured against my hair. Why didn't you tell me? That I was in danger before we even married. Because you already had enough reasons to resent me. I didn't need to add savior complex to the list. He pulled back to look at me. And because I didn't do it for gratitude, Carmine. I did it because the thought of anyone hurting you made me capable of things that scared even me. The DeSantis family. They did this? His expression went cold. We're working on confirming it, but yes, all evidence points to them. What are you going to do? What I have to. He cupped my face. But first, I'm getting you somewhere safe. You, your mother, and Ambra. The DeSantis made their move. Now they're waiting to see how we respond. I'm not running again, Lorenzo. You're not running. You're strategically positioning yourself where I can protect you while I dismantle their organization. His voice was firm. This isn't negotiable, Mowgli. But before we could continue arguing, one of my father's capos approached, his expression grim. Don Caccini, we have a problem. Someone just delivered this. He handed Lorenzo a manila envelope. Inside was a photograph of me leaving the hospital that night. A red X drawn over my face. On the back, a message in Italian. The Merino princess is next. Lorenzo went very still, the kind of stillness that preceded violence. When was this delivered? 10 minutes ago. Courier didn't wait for a response. Find him. Lorenzo's voice was ice. I want to know everything. Who hired him? Who gave him the package? Every detail of the chain of custody. After the capo left, Lorenzo turned back to me. This changes things. How? Because they're not just declaring war on your family. They're declaring war on mine. His hands framed my face. You're a Cazzini now, Carmine. An attack on you is an attack on me, on everything I've built. And I don't let attacks go unanswered. Over the next 48 hours, I watched Lorenzo orchestrate a response that was both brutal and brilliant. He didn't just retaliate against the DeSantis family. He systematically dismantled every alliance they had, every business relationship, every source of income and influence. And he did it all while keeping me, my mother, and Ambra locked down in a secure location, surrounded by enough armed guards to invade a small country. It was Julia who came to visit on the third day, bringing news and welcome distraction. Your husband is terrifying when properly motivated, she said, settling beside me on the couch. The DeSantis patriarch is trying to negotiate a truce. Will Lorenzo accept? No. Not until they hand over whoever ordered the hit on your father and sent that threat against you. She paused. He's making an example of them, Carmine, showing every family in Italy what happens when someone threatens what's his. I'm not a possession. No, you're something worse. You're the one thing Lorenzo Caccini actually cares about more than power. Her expression was serious. That makes you incredibly dangerous to everyone, including yourself. That night, Lorenzo finally returned, looking exhausted and covered in a fine layer of metaphorical blood. He found me in our bedroom, curled up with a book I wasn't reading. It's done, he said simply. The DeSantis family has been neutralized. The men responsible for your father's shooting are being dealt with by Antonio's people. The threat against you is eliminated. Dealt with how? In ways you don't need to know about. He sat on the edge of the bed. Your father is improving. Doctors say he'll make a full recovery. Relief washed through me. And us? Can we go home? Which home? His smile was tired. The villa? Rome? The monastery? We seem to collect safe houses like some people collect art. Anywhere that's ours. I set aside my book. Anywhere I can stop being the Merino princess or the Cazzini wife and just be Carmine. You're always Carmine to me. He pulled me into his arms, and I felt the tension finally start to drain from his body. But you're also mine. And after this week, after coming that close to losing you, I need you to understand something. What? Our 6 months? I can't wait anymore. His voice was rough. I need to know, Carmine. What do you want this marriage to be? Because I already know what I want. I want you, completely and forever. I want to wake up next to you every morning and know you're choosing to be there. I want to build something real with you, not just a strategic alliance, but an actual partnership. I pulled back to look at him, this complicated, dangerous, obsessive man who'd become essential to my existence. You want honesty? Always. I hated you when we married. Hated what I thought you represented, what I thought you wanted. I was so convinced you'd chosen wrong, that I was the consolation prize. I cupped his face. But I was wrong about everything. About you, about us, about what this could be. And now? Now I choose you, Lorenzo, not because our families arranged it, or because you protected me, or because it's strategic. I choose you because somewhere between our disastrous wedding night and today, I fell in love with you. His breath caught. Say that again. I love you. The words felt right, true in a way nothing else had. I love your obsessive need to protect me. I love how you let me be strong while making sure I'm never alone. I love that you're terrifying to everyone except me. I love... He kissed me, fierce and claiming and full of everything he couldn't put into words. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. I love you, he said roughly. I've loved you since that gala 2 years ago when I watched you navigate a room full of predators like you owned it. I've loved you through every moment of this marriage, even when you hated me. And I'll love you for the rest of our lives. That's a long time. Not long enough. His hands tangled in my hair. I want decades with you, Carmine. I want to build our empire together. Raise children who are as brilliant and terrifying as their mother. Grow old watching you rule this world we live in. Children? I raised an eyebrow. Plural? At least 3. His smile was genuine, warm, nothing like the cold expression he showed the world. I want our house full of life and chaos and love. Everything I never thought I'd have. I kissed him again, slower this time, savoring the moment. Then I guess we should start planning for that future. We should. He stood, pulling me with him. But first, we're going home. The real home. And we're starting our marriage over, properly this time. No lies, no games, no misunderstandings. Just us. 3 months later, I stood in our Rome penthouse, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold and crimson. My hand rested on my still flat stomach, protecting the secret I'd discovered that morning. Lorenzo found me there, wrapping his arms around me from behind. What are you thinking about? The future. I leaned back against him. Our future. And what do you see? I turned in his arms, meeting those storm-gray eyes that had once terrified me and now felt like home. Everything. I see everything we're building together. The foundation helping thousands of people. Our families finally at peace. And I took his hand and placed it over my stomach. And the next generation of Caccinis, coming in about 7 months. Lorenzo went very still, his eyes widening with an emotion I'd never seen before. Pure, unguarded joy. You're pregnant? We're pregnant, I smiled. Apparently starting over properly was very effective. His laugh was genuine, transforming his face completely. Then he was kissing me, his hands cradling my face like I was made of spun glass. I love you, he whispered against my lips. You and our child, and this life we're building. I love you too, and I meant it, completely and without reservation. I'd married Lorenzo Caccini expecting a prison sentence. Instead, I'd found a partner, a protector, and against all odds, the love of my life. The girl who'd been the wrong sister was exactly the right woman for this particular man. And together, we were building something that would last forever.